What's happening, HuntLeague community? In the last video, we asked a simple question. Can a Savage Axis actually be fixed? Or is it just a cheap rifle that you tolerate because maybe you just got a good deal on it? Today, we are addressing two of the biggest complaints that people have about this rifle, the trigger and the bolt lift. Now, both of these upgrades cost about $25 each. Now, before we get into it, YouTube doesn't really allow step-by-step demonstrations of a trigger or internal rifle modifications. So this isn't really an install guide. This is a results guide, how it felt before and how it feels now, and whether these two items are worth your money. Let's start with the biggest issue first, the trigger. From the factory, the Savage Axis trigger was awful. It was heavy, it was gritty, tons of slop and over travel. The trigger pull measured right around 7 pounds, and it was easily one of the worst factory triggers that I have ever felt on a hunting rifle. Now, after installing the MCarbo trigger spring kit, everything changed. This trigger now breaks right at 2 pounds. It's incredibly crisp. There's no slop, no grit. And I'm not exaggerating when I say this. It feels like a completely different rifle. This went from a trigger and a rifle that I actively hated to one that I genuinely have zero complaints about. It comes with a couple different springs. I use the 1.5 pound spring in here, and now it consistently breaks right at 2 pounds every single time I pull the trigger. This upgrade didn't just help, it transformed the rifle. On a scale of 1 to 10, this is an 11. It underpromised and over-delivered in every way. If you own a Savage Axis rifle and you're wondering where to start right here. This single upgrade took the Axis from a frustrating rifle to something that finally feels more refined. My only frustration now is with Savage themselves. The cost to put your garbage trigger in a rifle, it can't be much different than the components in this MCarbo trigger kit. So stop selling, the Bass Pro Edition, the Go Wild Edition, or whatever camo edition that you're using for marketing to sell that Axis rifle. Make a dadgum MCarbo edition and people will love it. Sell that MCarbo edition for $50 more than the regular Axis. And at the store, just let people pull the trigger on one and then pull the trigger on the other. They're gonna decide and they're gonna put their money into this. You could charge way more. Now, honestly, I mean, what would be the cost to you, Savage, to swap the factory parts that you're already putting in for the hardware costs that you're gonna find in this MCarbo kit? I guarantee it can't be more than 50 cents of hard cost. Now, I know the guys at MCarbo, they wouldn't like that because it is a huge part of their business, selling dollars worth of parts. And when I say dollars, I mean, maybe they have $1 or $2 in parts in this, but they're selling it for 25 bucks. More power to you guys at MCarbo. You guys did an awesome job with this kit. Again, buy this, it transforms your rifle. But all I can say is thank you, MCarbo. You saved the day, and this is a top-notch, economical way to upgrade the trigger on a Savage Axis. All right, now let's talk about the bolt. And this is where expectations matter. After seeing how much the trigger improved with this simple MCarbo kit, I'll be honest, I got a little optimistic. This bolt lift from the factory was by far the worst of any rifle I own. And that includes several other budget rifles that I have. So what did this little Desh Industries bolt lift kit do? Well, according to Desh, you can expect about a 20 to 30% improvement. And in fairness, they're probably right. Did it get better? Yes-ish. Is it still the worst bolt lift of any rifle that I own? That's also a yes. Now, this kit, it did make noticeable improvement, but it did not magically turn this into a smooth action or a bolt lift. And to be clear, every Savage Axis, they all feel a little bit different. So some of you guys watching this, you might cycle your bolt and think, what is this guy even talking about? Why is he even complaining about? This is a smooth bolt. Now, I wish that was my experience. This specific rifle that I have has an exceptionally rough bolt lift. And while the Desh kit helped, it didn't really transform it the same way that this trigger upgrade did. This took it to like something you would use in a match and like a high-end rifle. This was like, okay, it took something that was really bad and made it slightly better. Maybe that 20 to 30% that they kind of say it would. Now, one thing worth mentioning, I'd recommend ordering the stainless spacer version of this. The black coating on mine, it started flaking almost immediately. Like literally after the first time I pulled the bolt back and sent it, I was like, wait, is that some water? What got on it? And it was the coating actually cracking off. And I didn't have any solvents, there were no cleaners. I had just literally put it on, and within 30 seconds, almost all the coating had flaked off on this black thing. I don't know if I just happened to get a bad coating on it or if that's kind of what you can expect. Now, the black coating coming off, that's not going to affect the function unless some of those flakes get into the action somehow. But it was surprising and something that you should be aware of. Now, here's something interesting that I noticed during testing. Normally, lifting the bolt after firing, it's gonna feel heavier. Like after you pull the trigger and then you lift the bolt, and that's because you're resetting the firing pin. On this rifle, the bolt lift force was almost identical whether the firing pin was cocked or not. And that tells me something important. Most of the resistance is actually in the lugs and the action itself where it's making contact as it locks into place. And it's not the firing pin spring. So the real fix here probably isn't just springs or spacers like what you're going to find in this kit. It's likely maybe polishing, maybe removing a little bit of material on the bolts, like the lugs themselves, and maybe smoothing that action surface, or adding maybe a little bit of grease right there where the lugs kind of engage and lock into place. Now, adding a little grease might be something that I do a little bit later, but as I start kind of getting into these little things with this rifle, I start to think through like, well, how much money am I going to spend on each of these little upgrades? How much time do I want to spend? Do I really want to become a gunsmith just to fix a budget rifle? There are ways to fix this. There are ways to make it shoot incredible. Do I really want to invest that kind of time, that kind of money just to see how far I can take it? Look, I'm diving into that rabbit hole now. I'm going to keep going. So let's see where this thing takes us. So how do I rate the Desh kit? I'm giving it a 7 out of 10. Did it help? Yes. Did it do what it claimed? Actually, yes, it did. Did it completely fix the bolt? No. Would I buy it again? I would say yes, because that lift was terrible and it did make, a noticeable improvement. Is it worth the $25? For some of you guys, I would say it's probably not. If you're trying to make it something that just feels terrible into something that feels a little better, it's a pretty cheap investment, and I would say it's probably worth it for most of you. All right, these two upgrades. I have both of these kits still in my hand because I got these for my buddy who also has that Savage Axis, if you listen to the previous video. So we are going to kind of compare these rifles side by side with his that doesn't have any upgrades. It's still kind of set from the factory, and mine that has these upgraded little components and parts. Now, I did take this rifle back to the range, and immediately, I'm telling you, it felt like a different rifle. The trigger alone makes it easier to shoot and way more enjoyable. I mean, I used to think that I had the safety on. That's how hard that trigger pull was. Now, I knew before making any changes on my particular rifle that it was pretty darn accurate. At the range today, with the new trigger and the bolt lift kit, I was definitely encouraged. Shooting only 10 rounds and testing 3 different types of ammo, my cold bore shot in the next 2 rounds shot right at half MOA, and that's with 2 rounds going in the same hole. I know once I put a better optic on this rifle that I can only imagine how well it is going to shoot. I mean, this was 3 different rounds ranging from 105 grain to 140 grain, 6.5 Creedmoor ammo. And all 3 of those, which this is a little bit unusual for me when I'm testing, all 3 of those kind of grouped in the same place. So this is letting me know that, with most of the ammo that I'm going to feed, I'm going to start getting these groups in a very similar spot, which is pretty encouraging. So I am excited about the accuracy in this rifle, and these little components only help make that more enjoyable and a better experience at the range. All right, so we are making real progress with this rifle, and we haven't even touched the stock. We haven't messed with the recoil. You might notice that I don't have the rifle sitting right here in front of me. That's because I dropped it off earlier today to get that barrel threaded. I kind of debated based on a couple conversations I've had with some of the people in the comments and some input I've had. Some people recommended, why don't you try one of the clamp-on muzzle brakes? You know, it's a cheaper way that you can do it where you don't have to thread, and instead of buying an expensive brake and spending $100 threading your barrel, I thought about it. I talked to one of the guys at my local Magnum shooting center, the range that I'm a part of, and one of the guys was like, look, I had never seen one before. My first time seeing one, I was right here at the range. Somebody pulled the trigger and shot that muzzle brake right off the tip of their muzzle. I don't know if they had a baffle strike. I don't know if they had some pressure blowing it off. He was just like, I wouldn't touch that. So that's kind of all I needed to hear. And I kind of made a pivot and said, all right, I'm just going to thread this. That way, if I want to add a suppressor, I want to put a brake. So that's where the gun is at right now. So we're not done with it yet. But we are going to be tackling some of these big issues coming up in these next couple videos. We did tackle 2 of the glaring issues with really inexpensive fixes. These are very easy DIY upgrades. If you're not afraid to try just a little bit of work on your rifle, you don't really need super specialized tools, but be sure to watch a couple of the instructional videos. You know, both MCarbo and Desh kind of have instructional videos of how to install these. That way you know kind of exactly what you're doing. But be safe. Don't hesitate to reach out to a local gunsmith for help. You know, I have worked on these. I've worked on a lot of rifles at this point, and each of these fixes, they probably really took me less than 5 minutes to complete. So if you don't have a torque wrench though, that may be the only somewhat kind of specialized tool that you'll need specifically, you know, for removing the action screws to get to the trigger. But getting things back to the proper torque specs is absolutely critical on scopes, mounting rails, action screws, and more so if you plan to make any of these changes. So be sure to have the proper tools on hand. If you ever have any questions, just take it to a gunsmith. I guarantee they can install these in just a couple minutes, and they're going to get you moving in the right direction. Now, final questions to you. Is it smart to keep dumping money into a budget rifle like the Savage Axis? Well, that depends. If you already own a Savage Axis, these 2 upgrades, especially this trigger kit, they make a massive difference. I know I could purchase an extended bolt handle, which would kind of help create, you know, it's going to get better leverage, and it's probably going to be a little bit of an easier bolt lift. But I'm just stuck kind of riding on that line between, well, how much money do I really want to dump into this project? You know, and as I keep going, I keep getting tempted at every step of the way, you know, to make more expensive fixes. Like for instance, I could have bought the Timney trigger for this rifle at just around $100. I probably would have loved that trigger too. But I am glad after doing this that I opted to go with this $25 MCarbo trigger, as it really did exceed my expectations in every way. I mean, I'm telling you, it made this trigger feel night and day different. Now I still have big plans. Some are going to be more expensive than others. You know, I may spend more on things I know that I can kind of later transfer from one rifle to another, you know, like the optic, maybe even the muzzle brake. So stick with us as we keep pushing this Savage Axis to the limits to see just how far it can go. Drop a comment below. Would you upgrade your Axis? Are you considering it right now? Or are you considering or debating cutting your losses now and just moving to a different rifle? Even with all of its flaws, when you have a rifle that shoots as well as this Savage Axis, you may want to hold on to it and just see how good it can get. So make sure you stay subscribed to the channel because we're not done yet with this budget rifle build. Thanks for watching.